Okay, so today I am going to kind of do some live coding here. Uh, I've been told that there's a big difference between how I make it look in the videos and the actual experience. So, what we're going to do is we're going to start the next stage here of the HTTP request parsing. And I'm going to start with pulling the session information out of the request. Here I'm just going to do a real simple output in an empty object for now, just to verify that everything's working. Let's pull this up in the web service and make sure that it's functional. So you can see that it's not currently running. So let's go ahead and run that. Oh crap. That's right. The the newbound configuration setting, the configurations say to run the service on port 5773. I'm currently running newbound, so I just popped off here into the other screen, changed it to 5774, and sure enough, we can listen on it, and we get our empty object. All right, so we're up and running here. Let's take a look at the Flowlang's HTTP listen command. You can see there's some stuff I commented out. When I ported this from Java, I was just porting it straight from, the way it is in the Java version. There's some spaghetti code because it got written in stages over time. And I don't really think that the session stuff belongs at the Flowlang level. I think the session stuff belongs at the newbound level. So I commented all that out in the Flowlang version, but we're going to actually pull that. So this is twice ported now. We're going to port it from Rust. I had originally ported it to Rust, and now we're going to port it to Flow. All right. So what's the first? What do we do here? We check if it's in the parameters. Okay. So yeah, there's in newbound there's a sequence of priorities in terms of where the session ID can come from. And the first place it looks is if you just pass it in as a query string parameter, as a post parameter. If it has a parameter named session ID, then we use that. So you can override anything that might be in a cookie that way, right? All right. So here let's check for that. So we're passing in the parameters, and we're just going to create a constant type here of string, the string being session ID. The result of the has primitive will give you a Boolean, true or false. So let's do a match on that. You can see I'm unable to click to add. You shift click to add operations and nodes. So when that happens, all I can do is refresh the page and then keep going. Save it first. Save, then refresh. All right, so let's do a match on our whether or not it has a session ID. I'm going to match on the value true. So we want to go to the next case if it's false. No, I don't. No, I think we want to go to the next case if it's true. Yeah. All right. So let's create the next case here. Okay, so if it has the parameter session ID, then we want to get it. All right, so let's another primitive get. Connect that up, create another constant, type string. Yes, we could create it once and pass it into the local, and that would save some bytes. All right, so now we got our session ID if it was passed in as a parameter. So let's tackle the cookie, the cookie scenario here. So the cookie comes from the headers, right? Not from the parameters. So fortunately, headers is another thing that is automatically passed to your HTTP request when you create an HTTP request handler and pass it into the Flowlang's HTTP listen. There's actually a bunch of things that it creates. It passes in, including the path, the parameters, the headers, the there's more timestamps and such. Okay. Okay, so if it doesn't have the session ID, then we want to pull it out of the cookie, right? Yeah, good enough. All right. So because we don't have the language lacks what are known as synchros that can force one operation to fire before another one. We have to kind of fake that with data flow. And even here, theoretically, the local could fire before the true match, but I happen to know that the order you wrote them in is the order they'll execute if all of the flow, if all of the nodes have been populated, everything else being equal, then it will fire them in the order that they were written, if that makes sense. Anyway, let's go ahead and check that cookie. All right, so what are we doing here? So if it doesn't, right, so we're passing in the headers. We're just gonna, all right, yeah, see it's called headers. I'm gonna copy it. Names do not strictly need to, I mean, you can connect nodes that are not named the same and such like that. They're largely a convenience unless you're talking about a primitive or another command. But here I just wanted to add, to rename that second node to headers so that if I forget, I can just click on it and see what it's called. It can get confusing as to what flows into what. And there's a number of visual elements that we can add to address that, but we'll get there over time. Okay, so here we're doing the same thing, checking to see if the headers, if there's a cookie in the headers, right? And we ran into the exact same problem where we can't shift click to create in this exact same. So it's reproducible. That gives me hope I can fix it soon. Anyway, let's create our match now. Goofy. So yeah, is this ready for prime time? No, I wouldn't, I wouldn't teach a rookie that expects an easy language. Give it 6 months. We'll get there. But right now, all right. So we verified that what the heck? All right. We'll fix that later. All right. Let's go ahead and get I bet it still has the B and it just created the headers input. All right. Well, that's a mess. All right. We'll fix that in a bit. So let's go ahead and get the cookies, the cookie header. And again, yes, I could pass it in and then only create the constant once, but whatever. All right. Okay. So we're not just passing out the cookie. We're gonna split them. Okay. Yeah. So the cookies are semicolon space delimited. Current limitation in the Flow language editor doesn't allow us to have space characters at the beginning or and at the end of string constants. I'll fix that too. There we go. So we'll just pass in a single semicolon. All right, connect those up. And since we can't split on semicolon space, we're gonna put in a little bit of a hack here, and we're gonna trim those all up. Where'd you go? There you go. All right. So let's go ahead and make that a list, and we'll make that one a list, and then we'll connect it up here. Okay. So now we've got each of our individual cookies. Now let's save that, and yeah, let's see what's going on here. Yeah, see, so we've got a third input there. Think. Best way. Yeah, see, it's got A and B. All right, so bad idea renaming the node. Apparently, we've discovered a new bug. Don't do that for now. You know, I don't do a lot of these videos because, like, 6 months from now, this will be different, and someone will think they have to jump through a hoop that they don't have to, and yada, yada, yada. But I've been asked for, like, a real, how does this actually work? Does it actually work? What are the limitations? Is it practical? How far can I go? So, all right, I think we're now the data flow lines are disappearing. I know that in the actual, I've seen this before when it happens. The lines are actually there. They're just not rendering. There's some, I don't know, you can reconnect them and then they'll show. But yeah, all right. Well, that's a little goofy, but I do know that that's a rendering issue, not an actual, you know, a lot of these things are the flow language editor, not the flow language itself. The language itself is pretty solid in most respects. All right, so let's just continue on here. Let's create a local where we're going to find the session ID cookie, pass that bad boy out. All right, so yeah, let's save, and what do we need to do here? So if it starts with the string session ID equals, then we know we have our session ID cookie, and we'll pull off a substring of that. All right, easy enough. All right, sorry. I mean, you're watching me think. Sorry. Let's. I have a hard time thinking about what I'm saying and thinking about what I'm doing at the same time. Maybe I'll edit this up and trim some of that out. Okay. So what I was thinking of was let's put the list on the outside of this local instead of on the inside. That's literally what I was thinking about. So, okay. So now that we know that we have a single cookie that's coming in here, all right. So if it starts with session ID equals, all right. Hey guys, to break the monotony here, I'm just going to pop in a real little last minute edit audio voiceover. There's actually an issue with that. It only works because the cookie, the one we want, is the last one that actually gets passed in. I forgot to add a terminate on success here. in the next case. Okay, I think my brain fart is done. I'll switch back to the original audio now. All right, so again, Boolean is true. If it's true, we go to the next case. Otherwise, we're going to pass out a null. And, all right, so pass out a null here. And if it starts with the session ID equals, then we're going to pull a substring. So the starting at character 10 all the way to the right. Okay, well, we have a right primitive, but it takes the number of characters on the right-hand side, so we would have to subtract that from the length, which we're actually doing in the right primitive in Flowlang already, so maybe we should take a substring here. Yeah, I think. Let's take a look at the actual source code here. Right. Yeah, see, we're already subtracting it from the length. So yeah, let's do substring. We're going to have to get the length anyway in the flow code. Okay. C'est la vie. Make it so. There we go. So primitive of type length. There we go. All right, so now we pass in 10. Is it 10? Sure. It's a constant of type integer. Right? I'm losing it. All right, let's get a move on here. All right, so we pass in our original string. Now we're passing out characters 10 through the end. All right, so let's save. Preemptively save. All right, so that looks functional. Let's go out and we pass out the session ID. All right. So we've handled the case of it has a cookie. What do we do if it's not in the... Oh, so if it's not a parameter and it's not a cookie, then we create a new one. All right, so primitive, unique session ID, pass that bad boy out. Okay. And that, I think, gives us our entire logic for fetching the session ID. All right. Dun, dun, dun. Right? Yeah. It looks right to me. All right. Anybody else do this? Give it a last sanity check before running. Okay. Well, technically, that's not passing out a session. as I originally intended. That's passing out a session ID. So let's, session ID is a string that is not a JSON object. Let's get rid of that. All right, we're passing that out directly, so the MIME type is no longer application JSON, it's text plain. And that really ought to do it. Okay, so here's our, what? I wrote that literally, oh. Let's go into, all right. Now we have to go under the hood and flow, because the primitive that I'm using was written earlier today. Why is it not being recognized in the, I mean, it's in the, it's already been added to the primitives. All right. I give up. No, never give up, never surrender. What do we do? Let's jump into flow. See what's going on. So, well, you wanted to see what it really looks like. This is really what it looks like. You know, all cool things start somewhere. Let's just rebuild them all. Let's recompile everything. All right. Will that do it? No, it won't do it. Here's why it can't find the primitives that I wrote earlier today. They're not on crates.io yet. All right. Well, if you can't laugh at yourself, you're going to be a sad motherfucker. All right. So here we go. Now we fire up our new bound. Holy moly. That's my session.